go into the lesson. But before I go into the lesson, I want to take a second to do an engagement activity. So we're going to take a minute. I know by now you should have your book, your pen, pencil, whatever it may be. And we're going to take a minute and I want you to write one thing you know about the English B paper 1. And I also want you to write one thing you want to know about the English B paper 1. So if you want, you could create a table with 3 columns. First column, what you know about the paper. Second column, what you want to know about the paper. And finally, the third column is going to be completed at the end of the presentation, but I want you to bear in mind as we go through one thing you would have learned throughout the presentation. So I'm going to give you roughly around a minute, and I want you to really think about this. Don't just pass it off and say, sure. No, take a minute, and I want you to really think about what you know, what you want to know. And as I said, as the lesson progresses, you will write at the end of the presentation one thing that you have learned. So in my brain, I want to, you guys are probably too young to know about Jeopardy. I want to do the Jeopardy, da na 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 na, da na 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 na, theme song, so that, you know, you have an idea of what it is. Your minute is going to be ending quite soon. So I'm going to give you a few more seconds. And I want to hear your voices, guys. I know that you are in a group setting with students that you have never met. And I know that some of us might be shy, but what I always say to my students is that there is no stupid questions, there's no stupid comments, don't be shy, we're here to learn. And I want to hear from you so that I know exactly how to help you to better understand. So what I really want you to tell me in the next minute or so is what you really want to know about the English B paper. And if it is you want to share as well what you already know, fabulous. But that column that says one thing I want to know about the English B paper, that is the column I really want you to take a few, I want you to share with me. And for those of us who are just joining, welcome to our English B paper 1 session for CSEC. Are we ready? And if it is that you are ready, just use the raise your hands tool and I will unmute your mic if you're not able to, and you can share with me. If it is that you are afraid to speak, you can type your response in the bar and I should be able to see it and I will share what you have to say. So even if I have 1 or 2 persons sharing with me what they want to learn about the paper, fabulous. All right, so let's go. Anyone? Okay. Hi, Fearless Tiana is here to share with us again. Thank you, Tiana. Let me unmute your mic. Give me a second.
It's unmuted already.
All right, awesome, Tiana. Go ahead.
So I want to know, will the paper one remain the
Hold
same?
on, Tiana. Could you project a little bit?
I'm projected. Maybe it's the speaker
Okay.
on the tablet. Will the paper one remain the same as the previous paper ones? That is, will it exclude the poems and the short stories that are on the syllabus?
Awesome, excellent. And Tiana, I have my pens and my pretty paper, and I'm making a note of what it is you want to learn, because I'm going to answer that question shortly. I don't want to answer it now because the answer is coming up in the presentation, but excellent question. Is there anyone else who would like to share? And I don't want you to be shy because we're all here to learn. Anyone else? And you can just raise your hand, or if it is that you don't know where to find, okay, Miss Walker, I am unmuting your mic. Go ahead, my love. I am seeing your hand. Go ahead and ask your question. What you want to learn?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
So one thing that I know about the English paper one is that it's an unseen paper. However, will it consist of, as Tiana said, the poems, reading comprehension, will the content be the same?
Okay, my love. And thank you, Miss Walker. You are I like your voice. Awesome voice. All right, anyone else? Anyone else who is not too shy? You can raise your hands. Anyone else? No one else? Don't all speak at once now. All right, so I guess as we go along, persons are going to share exactly what it is that they want to learn, but I've written what Tiana said and what Miss Walker said. All right, guys, so and remember, guys, as you go through the presentation, if there's anything that you have learned, anything that's there, just make a note of it on your table. Now we're going to actually get into the lesson now. So the overall objective of today's lesson is that you understand how to complete the English B exam. And in order to achieve that objective, you're going to be looking at a couple of specific objectives. So we're going to be examining the various sections of the English B exam paper. We're going to be analyzing the types of questions that you might see in the various sections. And we're going to discuss certain tips that you can use, practical ways to complete each section of the exam. Now, currently, I have my video on. I'm going to mute my video so that you can focus on the presentation. And then at the end, we'll come back for a discussion. Something else I want to make known. For each section of the paper, I've inserted a question section. So as I'm going through any particular section, and you have a question, I want you to make note of it so that I can address your question when it comes to the question and answer session of this, whatever section we're dealing with. So we're going to talk first about grading consideration. And when I say grading consideration, I'm talking about what it is or how it is your final grade will be comprised. Now, for the 2020 exam, we have our final grade, exam grade, being comprised of a paper 1, English B paper 1, and we have our SBA, which is known as paper 3/1 or 031. Those two exams or aspects of the exams will come together to give you your final grade. Now, for example, if you are a private candidate, meaning that you did not do the SBA, then your grade will comprise of paper 1 and paper 3, which if you look on your timetable, paper 3 is 3/2. The reason why I'm making mention of paper 3 is that students are saying, and they keep asking, Miss, will there be a paper 2? Because when they look at the timetable, they're seeing a paper 3/2 and they're thinking that it's a paper 2. That 3/2 is making reference to paper 3. All right? So with that said, just a reminder that there will be no paper 2 for this sitting of the exam. And we are all aware of the various restrictions with regards to COVID-19. Now, paper 1 is based on the syllabus, is typically 29% of your overall grade. What does that mean? It therefore means that, look at my table, I don't know, the paper 1, 2 hours, and you have 9.5, 9.5, 9.5. The paper is divided accordingly, and then it is, what's the word I'm looking for? It's combined to 29%. Now, this is how typically the syllabus dictates that the paper and the overall layout of the grading scheme will be or should be. Now remember that this year is not typical, and so based on what we know, we're not sure how the final marks will be divided, but once again, don't worry about it. Your major aim at this point in time is to ensure that you understand what is going to come on the exam and you understand how to complete the exam. Now, let us continue. Now, in saying that, we're going to look at what the syllabus says about the English B paper 1. Now, according to the syllabus, this paper consists of 60 multiple choice questions. All questions are compulsory, and I would ask you, what is the meaning of compulsory? And I'm sure you're going to tell me that compulsory is what? Somebody, anybody? Anyone? Must. Excellent. I was about to say excellent. So all questions must be completed. And I say this because students have the mentality that once you have a multiple choice paper, you can eeny, meeny, miny, moe. And we all know what I'm talking about. Eeny, meeny, miny, moe the paper and complete the paper. Now, the fact that it's compulsory, therefore means that it is recommended that you take the time to complete the paper. Now, each genre will have 2 stimuli, 1 piece of Caribbean literature and 1 other. I'm going to explain what that means. 10 questions will be set on each stimulus, hence a total of 20 questions for each genre. And we have drama, poetry, and prose fiction. These are the 3 genres that the paper will be featuring, right? Now, what does this mean? Hold on a second. This means that for the breakdown of the paper, The English B paper 1 is known as the unseen paper. I'm not sure if Tiana used that word. I think it was Tiana. So Tiana made mention of the word unseen, and I'm happy. What does the word unseen? Go ahead. Somebody's speaking. Nobody's? Okay. So the word unseen.
I'm saying it was Walker. Walker mentioned.
Okay, thank you, Tiana. Walker mentioned the word unseen. So the term unseen basically means what? Anybody wants to tell me? Or Walker, would you want to explain? Okay, so the term unseen means that you, whatever questions that you're getting per genre, and remember we said genre, drama, poetry, prose, it's not something that you would have studied for. For example, the various texts that you have already studied for, the various poems that you would have already covered might not come on the paper 1. And so what you're going to be given is drama extracts, poems, and prose passage extracts that you might have never seen before. And therefore, that is why the paper is known as an unseen paper. Once again, you have 2 hours to complete the paper. We said this before. The paper is divided into 3 genres: drama, poetry, prose, and there are 2 extracts and 2 poems per genre. Well, 2 extracts / poems per drama. Let me explain. For example, drama, you have 2 drama extracts, 10 questions per extract. Poetry, you have 2 poems, 10 questions per poem. And for prose, you have 2 prose extracts, 10 questions per extract. So as was stated before, for each genre, you have 20 questions in total, which adds up to 60 questions overall, 1 mark per question. Now that I've given you a basic overview of the paper, is there any questions? Anyone that's not so clear? Anything that I said that you're not sure about? Anything that you want to clarify? I'm giving you a minute or 2. No? We're good, we're fine? Okay, so let's continue. Now, you should be seeing on your screen to your, this would be right. I have no sense of direction. To your right, you should be seeing a copy of the cover sheet. This is what the syllabus gives. And the cover sheet is a typical paper 1 type cover sheet with series of instructions, and you have, once again, your 2 hours, paper 1, English B. Now, couple of things I want you to take into consideration when you are preparing for your exam. Always read the cover of the exam paper. Always. Don't take it for granted that because you practice at school, you might have done it via Zoom, you already have a basic understanding of what the paper is or the instructions that are given on the cover. Don't take that for granted, because the truth of the matter is you don't know if there might be any changes or something might be a little different from what you studied. So always read the instructions. Something else to also pay attention to the directions that are given. directions that are given on the cover, exam cover, and directions that are given by the exam invigilators. Very important, because sometimes there are changes to the paper and these directions might be communicated. Always examine your answer sheet to see if the details are corrected. Now, something I want you to bear in mind is that in doing your paper one, you're going to have your question booklet, and then you're going to have, as you would have practiced at school, your answer sheet separately. And I've already said, follow the invigilator's instructions. Now, we're going to jump right into section A, dramatic extract. Now, a dramatic extract is a section taken from a play. And that is why it's called an extract, because it's taken from a larger play. In section A, you will have to read 2 dramatic extracts. And once again, I love to repeat so that it is, I love to say the word brandish in your brain exactly what you will encounter as in the exam. In analyzing dramatic extracts, you must always keep the dramatic techniques in mind. This is essential. Now, I know students love to read the dramatic extract. And before you, we're going to take a minute to look at a sample extract that was taken from a paper. Now, this is not the complete extract, because the complete extract would not be able to fit on my slide. And what I always want you to bear in mind is that, of course, you would know that this is what do we call this? Can somebody let me know? These words, stage directions, excellent. So these are our stage directions. And oftentimes, we're going to talk a little bit more about stage directions, but oftentimes when we look at stage directions, remember the syllabus says that one extract will be Caribbean and one extract will be non-Caribbean, right? When you look at Caribbean plays, you generally see more stage directions. However, when you look at a play like Shakespeare's, any one of, let's say, Tempest, you realize that there aren't as many stage directions. It is based on what technique the writer would have used based on the time period that the playwright, would have been writing. So for Caribbean plays, modern dramas, you will find more stage directions, and it's very, very important. You will also find that the language is a little different depending on the type of extract that we are looking at. So those things that you're going to find, that you're going to have some differences. Now, when we look at dramatic techniques, as you know, are devices the playwright uses to convey his message. And his message could be whatever thematic concern that he's trying to convey to us, the audience. And please note that I'm using the word audience because when we look at dramatic extracts, they are meant to be performed. So even though we are reading the extract on paper, it is something that is designed to be performed on stage. So while you're reading, it is important that you take that into consideration, because that will impact how you interpret the piece of work that you're seeing or you're reading, right? Now, I also want you to understand that these dramatic techniques are used to convey whatever message. So, for example, when we look at our stage direction, what are some of the possible messages that can be conveyed using the stage directions? Anyone? Somebody? I know you might be writing, but it's good. I want to hear your voice. Nobody? I have a group of shy kids. Nobody? All right. So when we look at stage directions might convey information about the setting, information about the characters, and it might help with characterization, the process of kind of communicating the various character traits and skills and personality, right? Stage directions might also help you in terms of where the action or how the action is taking place, right? Now, we talk about irony, and we have dramatic irony, and this is one of my favorite ones because, simply put, dramatic irony is when you, the audience, you are aware of something that is going on. However, the other character or characters on the stage, they're unaware. And so because of that, it creates dramatic irony. And I'm going to use the Tempest in that, because you guys would have read the Tempest, in that when we look at dramatic irony in the Tempest, you see where Ferdinand is unaware of the fact that his father is alive. His father is unaware of the fact that he is alive. But we, the audience, we know exactly what's going on. We know that Ferdinand is alive. And so that creates dramatic irony. Now, another device that we often see is spectacle. And spectacle, this beautiful word right here, is when we see a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? To simply put it, a lot of excitement. We see a lot of elements of maybe the use of lighting. So when we think of spectacle, we can think of Act 1, Scene 1 of the Tempest, where you had the tempest and the storm and things where the ship was basically going to be destroyed or capsized, and that idea of excitement, you see that. Now, another very important dramatic technique, and we're reviewing these because you might see questions asking you about these dramatic techniques, right? So the use of props. Now, props can be anything that the playwright uses to convey his message. It could be a clock. It could be a watch. It could be any item of significance that is used to convey a message to us, the audience. So it could be a clock on the wall, and the playwright wants to tell us about time, and so the clock is used to convey some kind of message about time, right? So those are some of the dramatic techniques that you might encounter, right? So in looking at this section, we want to look at some of the common questions. But before we look at some of the common questions, I want you to take the time and to look at this extract. You realize that this extract is structured a little differently from this extract. And if you guys were talking to me more, I wanted us to kind of read. I wanted a couple of persons to read some of extracts, aspects of this extract. So if it is that you can read for me, I want you to raise your hands. Okay, I see Walker's hand is up. Thank you, Walker. I see Tiana's hand is up. Awesome, Tiana. I want one more person to read for me. Shanae, awesome. All right. So can I get somebody to read like the stage directions? Or am I asking too much? Okay, so let me tell you the order that you're going to do. All right, so Walker, you're going to read the stage directions. Shanae, you're going to be the woman servant. And Tiana, you're going to be the young lady, right? So that is it. And I want you to be as dramatic as you want to be. I want you to go wild, have fun. So everyone, I want you to listen and then we will continue. So guys, do you want me to unmute your mics or you're good? All right, so your mics are, so you can begin after 3. 1, 2, 3. You can go ahead.
A young lady, gloved and hatted, with a coat on, is sitting in the window seat. A clock strikes 6. The young lady turns and looks at her watch. She rises with an air of one who waits, and is almost at the end of her patience. With a sigh of weary, resignation, she sits down and begins to read. Presently the book sinks to her lap, her eyes close, and she dozes into a slumber. An elderly woman servant comes in from the hall and disappears in the pantry without noticing the young lady. As she returns, the young lady lets her book drop, awakening herself and startling the woman servant.
Excellent.
God bless us.
The young lady picks up the book and places it on the table.
Sorry to wake you, miss, I'm sure, but you are a stranger to me. What might you be waiting here for now?
Waiting for someone to show some signs of knowing that I have been invited here.
Oh, you're invited, are you? And has nobody come? Dear, dear.
A wild-looking old gentleman came and looked in at the mirror, and I heard him calling out, "Nurse, there's a young and attractive female waiting in the parlor. Go and see what she wants." Are you the nurse?
Yes, miss, I'm Nurse Guinness. That was old Captain Shotover, Mrs. Hushabye's father. I suppose it was Mrs. Hushabye that invited you, Ducky.
I understood her to do so, but really I think I'd better go.
Miss, we need a Nurse
Oh, we
Guinness.
need, go ahead, Shanae, you can read it.
Like, who names themselves Guinness? Oh, don't think of such a thing, miss. If Mrs. Hushabye has forgotten all about it, it will be a pleasant surprise for her to see you, won't it?
Excellent, ladies. Excellent job. I'm so proud of all of you. Good job. All right. So, couple of things that stood out. Anything stood out for anybody before I start? Anything stood out? Anything? Anything? Anyone wants to, and even if you can unmute your mic and just share. Anything stood out for anyone?
Yes, Miss. The stage direction. In the stage direction where it spoke, it didn't just give us what the lady was doing. It gave us like what she had on as well. Because it stated a young lady gloved and hatted with a coat on. And it tells us that, and it also tells us that she was sitting in the window seat. So it didn't just necessarily tell us about what she was doing, but what she had on.
Good job. Go ahead, Davidson. I saw that your mic was unmuted. And Tiana, do you want to say something? If it is, you can just unmute your mic and speak. Now, Shanae, excellent point. And this is what I want you to understand. In literature, it is not just comprehension. Yes, you're reading to understand, but you're also a detective. So you have to pick up on all of those clues. Think about one of those. I'm a TV addict, right? Don't be surprised. And when you watch those detective shows and you're looking at catching the killer, you have to look at all the evidence that is there. And so when it comes to literature and you're reading the extracts, the poems and the prose, you have to pick up on those minute details. Everything is important, right? And as Shanae was just saying, the stage directions here, we're seeing that we're being provided not just with information about where the story or what's going on. We see detailed description of this young lady. And then if you're suspicious like myself, the question you should be asking yourself is, why is the playwright giving me all of this information? Why is this important? Another thing that they love to ask is, they love to ask about the relationship between two persons. It's another question that really pops up quite frequently. Anyone wants to make any other observations? Because we're going to be using this extract some more. Anyone else? Anyone? I saw Davidson's mic unmuted a minute ago. Is it that you wanted? And guys, don't be shy. Don't be shy. I promise I won't eat you. Not today. Maybe tomorrow. All right. So let's continue. So let's look at some of the commonly used or commonly seen questions, right? So after I've examined a number of different aspects of a number of different papers over the years, some commonly seen questions is like, they like to ask you about the relationship between characters. So for example, what would be, based on the extract, what kind of relationship would you say the woman servant and the young lady, what kind of relationship they have? And when we say relationship, we're not talking about romantic relationship. We're talking about how do these two characters relate to each other. It could be that they're actually related mother and daughter, or it could be that they're friends. It could be that they're husband and wife. It could be that they're neighbors. So they're asking you to look at how the characters are presented, and based on the presentation of these characters, how are they related, right? Sometimes you're asked questions about setting, questions based on the stage directions, and guys, these last 3 questions, if you don't write anything else, Write these down. Dramatic, let me go back. Dramatic technique, dramatic significance, and dramatic element. I assure you, a variation of these questions will come on the paper. So because it is drama, you cannot escape questions that are based on dramatic technique. Understand what I'm saying? Now, when we talk about dramatic significance, I thought about it today. And I was like, what is dramatic? What really is dramatic significance? Because in order to answer a question, you have to understand what the question is asking you. So a lot of times when you go in the exam, it's not that you don't understand the extract, it is that you don't understand exactly what the question is asking of you. So I looked at it, and in looking at dramatic significance is makes reference to any aspect of the play, could be the character, the plot, the stage, or whatever it is, right? And they're asking you, how does that fulfill the writer's purpose? How is this significant in a dramatic way? And let me explain. Raise your hands if you don't understand what I'm saying, because this is where we're getting to the meat of the matter, right? So, for example, in this question that is based on the extract that we just read, which of the following is the best explanation of the dramatic significance of the luggage? So they're asking you to look at the luggage right here, and which was left on the step. So they're asking you to look at the use of that item and say, how does this item helps to fulfill the writer's purpose, whatever message the writer is trying to convey, right? And so if we look at it, you're given a number of options. It indicates, and let me go back here, let me see, and this is something that you will often see, that when we're talking about questions, typically the lines for which the question is taken from, it is in the question. The lines from the extract, which the question is based, it's in the question. It's not here right now. But if we look at it, we realize that the answer for this question would be B. And sorry guys, I wanted to show you the exact line. If I see it in the next section of the presentation, I'll show you. And I just want to explain this. So the answer is B, because based on what CXC is saying is that from the luggage being on the step, one can think that the young lady has returned to the house. So the luggage is significant because it shows that this character has returned home. And that is why that would be the significance. So let me just clear up, because yes, the answer is important, but because we're doing a practice activity, I want you to understand the structure of the question. So the question is basically asking you, based on what is reference, what meaning do you get from that? What information do you gather? And notice the word infer. What can you think? What can you conclude? What conclusions can you draw based on this? All right? Anybody? Everybody? All right. Now, This one. Remember we talked about stage directions. Questions can be asked based on the stage direction, right? So if we look here, you're going to give me the answer. This is what we just read. The awesome young ladies just read. We have Tiana Walker and we have Shanae just read for us. And the question is, and I want you to tell me if you can answer this question. The stage directions in lines 1 to 8, and always, guys, if it is that you're given the lines, always, always, always take the time to go back to the lines, right? 1 to 8. So 1 begins here and 8. So all of this would be lines 1 to 8, right? Suggests that the young lady is, and you have A, angry because she's late, tired of waiting for her friend, frustrated by her current situation, grateful for some time to read and sleep. Now, I want some brave souls to tell me what the answer is.
Miss B.
Somebody said B, thank you. So we have a B. Anyone else? Come on, you have nothing to lose.
Is it C?
I have a C, okay. Thank you, my love. Anyone else?
C, Miss.
Okay, we have another C. All right, go ahead, Tiana. I see you've raised your hand.
I said C.
Okay, C. Anyone else? One more. So we have 1B and 2 C's. And I'm going to explain, going to go through. We're good? Okay. And the answer is C. And congratulations to all the beautiful winners in the house. No, for all the persons who got it correctly. Let us go through. So the stage directions in lines 1 to 8 suggest that the young lady is, and the answer is frustrated by her situation. The question is, based on this, where do we, having read this, what suggests that the young lady is frustrated?
The young lady turns and looks at her watch.
Ah, the young lady, excellent. Turns and looks at her watch. Anybody else?
The lines that precede. She rises with the lines that follow. She rises with an air of one who waits and is almost at the end of her patience.
Ah, good. And we're talking about line 2 going into line 3. So from these lines, we can deduce that she is in fact really cross, angry, and no, that's too much. She is frustrated, right? Now, excellent, guys. Excellent, excellent, guys. Excellent. All right, so let's look at this again. Remember we talked about dramatic effect. And the question is, the dramatic effect created by the reference to a clock strikes 6. And dramatic effect in this term can be similar to dramatic significance. Notice the different terms meaning the same thing, right? And notice the use of the capital most likely serves to show. So the use of that capital most suggests that, yes, there are other things that the striking of the clock might create. The dramatic effect, the striking of the clock might create. However, you need to choose the one that is most likely served to show, right? So, was that an answer repeat? Do we have so look at number line 2, and you can look at it in its entire context, in the context of lines 1 and 2, but we're focusing on that a clock strikes 6. Yes, my dear, I see some mics unmuted. Go ahead.
The young lady has been waiting for a long time.
The young lady has been waiting for a long time. Which one is that? Oh, that's D. Okay. And even if it was said, Leandra, I saw that your mic was open. I am seeing Tiana's mic is open. Go ahead.
I think the answer is also D.
All right, so you think the answer is also D. One more person. Anyone else? We agree or we disagree? And it's okay to disagree. So, all right, drum roll please. And the answer is D. The young lady has been waiting for a long time. So the dramatic effect, and I want you to look at the term, because yes, it's good that we have arrived at the answer. We need to understand what the question is asking. So the dramatic effect created is that based on the clock striking 6, we are aware that, wow, this young lady is here and she's waiting a while. And now we understand why she is so frustrated. So I'm saying this to say, if you understand, if you're able to read the cues of what the passage is conveying to you, when you go to answer the questions, you are better able to arrive at your answers because you understand what is going on. Let us look at this one. Now, we didn't read this one, but I wanted us to look at it. Which of the following is the best? And remember, similar explanation. Yes, there might be others that are linked, but which one is the best? This is similar to most. And notice, whenever you see capital letters in a question, you need to pay attention, right? Best explanation of the dramatic impact of lines 41 to 43. And notice lines 41 to 43 would be what the captain says. And notice it says, as she passes him, and notice what is said here. Ducky, do you suppose, woman, that because this young lady has been insulted and neglected, you have the right to address her as you addressed my wretched children, whom you have brought up in ignorance of the commonest decencies of social intercourse? Now, talk to me. When we talk about dramatic impact, what is the impact of that line? What is conveyed based on the use of that, the captain's lines, his dialogue, what he said? Anybody? That demonstrates that the captain does not like strangers in his home. B, it emphasizes similarities in the way in which the captain and the nurse treat the young lady. C, It highlights the similarities in social class and expectations between the captain and the nurse. D, it suggests that the captain's disapproval of the familiarity with which the nurse is treating the young lady. Anyone? Someone?
Miss D.
Miss, I said D.
D or B?
Dog.
D, Miss Dog.
Dog. So we're all agreeing that this is making reference to dog.
Yes, Miss.
Yes, miss.
All right. You're sure you're live? I'm sorry.
No, Miss Felicia.
All right. So the answer is D. It's and guys, this is why when you're reading too, you have to read. If it is a punctuation, you have to read it in the tone that it's meant to be read. So for example, if there are exclamation marks, my apologies guys, my background is going to be a little noisy for less than a minute. All right, so if it is that whatever way, if read, making note of the punctuation marks, exclamations, questions, read with whatever attitude or whatever attitude that the person is using to read, not to read, whatever attitude the dialogue conveys. Yeah, the dialogue conveys, because that will help you to get a better idea of exactly what it is that you are expected to know. All right, so look at this. We talked about suspense before. And it says, which of the following contributes most to the suspense in the extract? And you're given 3, 4 lines. And you are then, a tip, as I said to you before, whatever lines you are given, you need to go back into the extract and you need to look at the context in which those lines are presented, are spoken, and you need to look at whether or not those lines contribute to, for example, in this case, suspense. Now, this, because I kind of know the answer, I won't be able to go back to the 12, 13, 14 lines 24. However, we can look at what is presented before us and you can guess as to which one might or which one most. I see Tiana's hand is up. Go ahead, my lovely.
I think the answer is A, because it said waiting for someone to show some signs of knowing that I have been invited here. So for me, that creates suspense, because in my mind, I'm wondering, who is it that she's going to meet? Will the person come or will the person not come?
All right, so I'm going to go. So the line would have been 12 to 13. The lines rather would have been 12 to 13. So here, that the young lady's read, that said, the young lady waiting for somebody to show some sign of knowing. So it comes right here that she would have arrived, say, signs that knowing that I've been invited. The woman servant, oh, you're invited, are you? And has anyone come? Dear. When we read this entire line, let us look at it in the context and look at the response of the woman servant. Do you see any, what's the word I'm looking for? Suspense. Do we see any suspense here? And I don't want you to mix genres, but just to give you an idea of what we mean when we talk about suspense, suspense is created when you're not really sure what's going to come next. You're like, and this is similar to when you arrive at, no, I'm not going to say it because I don't want us to mix genres, but suspense is created when you don't know what's going to come. So we have A on the table. Thank you, Tiana. Do we have any other projected? Anyone else? Don't be shy, guys. Yeah.
I say B.
You're thinking B? All right, so let me jump to line 14. And it says, oh, you're invited, are you? And has nobody come? Dear. Do we get an idea of suspense here? I'm not saying you're right. I'm not saying you're wrong. Maybe I'm enjoying myself too much. I give you. Let's look at 24. I don't think 24 is it. And all right, let's just look at 30 to 31. Oh, it's not right here. It would have been further up. So based on this, it would have been D. So let me explain something to you. Sorry, wrong question. Let me explain something to you guys. When we're looking for suspense, you need to look at what happened. For example, we're looking at lines 12 to 13, right? And you're looking if that line creates suspense. Good? You need to look at what happened in line 11. You need to look at lines 12 to 13. And you also need to look at line 14. Let me explain why. You're going to see if, based on what happened before and based on what happened in lines 12 to 13, was there some, wow, I didn't expect that, some like, you don't know what's going to happen next kind of moment. And to best describe that kind of moment, we think of in terms of that climax where you're not sure what is going to happen next. That idea that, wow, I don't know. So in looking at that, you have to basically examine the lines and see how best that line offers you a sense of the unexpected coming up next. And that is why it is important to basically understand the context in which that dialogue that the line is referring to is presented. Let me know if you understand what I'm saying. All right, so let's continue a second. Now, this extract is taken, this is a Jamaican play. I love this play. What's the name of the play again? Oh my God, I'm getting old. I will tell Trevor, it's a Trevor Rowan play. Guys, I can't remember the play, but I'll let you know. And you notice how the stage direction is very minimal throughout so far. The dialogue is very straight and to the point. And so yes, Tiana, you can go ahead.
Old story time.
Thank you, Tiana. I couldn't remember. Yes, old story time. Excellent. And the dialogue is presented in a way that it's short, it's to the point, it's easy to read. Now, students have this misconception that when you see dialogue like this or an extract like this, it is, no, never underestimate anything that is presented on the paper. Just like how you would analyze something like this, where it's a lot of word, this is might be a little better because this, at least with this, and this is a non-Caribbean extract, at least with this, you're able to gather more information. However, with dialogue like this, and this is excellent piece of work, Old Storytime, excellent play, one of my all-time favorite plays, but it therefore means that you need to stop and you need to look at the words, how the words are presented, what message is being conveyed. So don't underestimate a play that is very, in terms of what it looks like on paper, seems very easy to read, easy to follow. So in your mind, wow, this is easy. No, it's not. Same level of analysis that you would have done before, you also need to do for this. So what are some tips? Now, some students love to read the questions first and then read the extract. It depends on you. If you're the type of person who really needs to understand in order to answer, I would say read the extract, ensure you understand the extract, and then you read the question. And remember, you're reading 2 extracts, right? Next, read the extract. For some reason, people believe that when you're reading an extract, you don't really need to, if you read it once, that's okay. It therefore means that you might have to read it multiple times, and that's okay. It also means that you might have to read it in sections. If it is that you're not understanding, you can read one section based on the question, try and answer the question, but oftentimes it's good to get a general idea of what the overall extract is saying, because that really helps. Pay attention to the stage directions. They're very important. Every word in the dialogue is important. Examine how the characters relate to each other. Examine that, and that's important. Remember that a dramatic extract, and I've said this before, is meant to be performed. Now, I want you to understand that the terms dramatic significance, dramatic, what's the other one? Dramatic significance, dramatic impact. Those terms are not scary terms. Don't be scared because they seem like so hard. Oh my God, I don't understand what this question is asking me. No. Take the time. A lot of time from our interactions now, going through the questions just now, we realize that dramatic significance and dramatic impact, they're very similar in the questions they're asking. So I would take some time and do some more reading on those. Something that was not mentioned here, but pay attention to contrast. Contrast, as you know, is what? What is contrast? Contrast, yes, Tiana?
So contrast is basically like one thing goes against the other. So they're opposites in my opinion.
Tiana, you're awesome. You're on the right track. Contrast is when you see the difference. There is some amount. So the extract might start and it's very light and it's very airy and things are awesome and everybody's having fun, and then the extract progresses and everything becomes dark and depressing. That is some level of contrast. So contrast is any difference that you might see between situations, persons, the presentation. Once again, we didn't talk about it, but use of contrast is something that is often seen on the exam paper. Now, as I come to the end of this section, section A, do we have any questions so far? Anything? Any question that you wrote and you, or anything that you're not clear on? So we're good? All right, so we're going to move on. We might move a little quicker in this section because I'm paying attention to the time. Now we look at section B and poetry. Now, some of you are terrified when it comes to poetry. I was terrified when I was at your age. And then when, I don't know, one day I woke up and I realized that a poetry, or a poem rather, it's conveying an experience, or it might convey a story. And I don't want you to say all poems, but there's some message that is being related to you. And why it is that poetry is often terrifying to you guys is because you don't understand how to figure out the message. And sometimes this message is hard to understand because of, you might have heard a term, the economy of words, meaning that poems say a lot in as few words as possible. And how is it that poems do this, right? Now, we talk about this in terms of the literal and the figurative meaning, but before we go into that, we need to look at the fact that, yes, section B, you're expected to analyze 2 poems, 10 questions each. In analyzing the poems, you must pay attention to not only the literal meaning, but also the figurative meaning. So the literal meaning of the poem is the surface level meaning. So you might read the poem and you might, oh, this is such a nice poem. And let me think of a poem that seems very nice on the orchids, right? Orchids might seem, or bird shooting season. I'm making reference to poems that you might already know. In that, for bird shooting season, it is a poem about persons preparing to go to shoot birds. And this might be the literal meaning, right, of the preparation of going to shoot birds, right? The surface meaning. But then you look at the figurative meaning. Although bird shooting season is a pretty simple poem on the surface, and when I say simple, it's easy to read, you think you understand it, then there's a deeper meaning. And you look at the differences between the expectations for males and females. Women are expected to be in the kitchen, while men are expected to be rough, tough, right? And you look at gender roles, and that is the deeper meaning, and you look and you dive into that. Now, some persons don't want to look at the deeper meaning. And the truth of the fact is, when you look at the deeper meaning, you enjoy the poem more. And so how do we create this deeper meaning? This deeper meaning is created through the use of figurative device. These devices are basically what helps to make the poem come to life, right? So we're going to talk about figurative devices, but I want you to look at a sample poem that was taken from a CXC past paper. And you look at the poem, and the poem seems pretty simple, right? And you look at it, you realize always when you see a poem, always examine the structure of the poem, right? Always examine the structure of the poem. And when we talk about the structure of the poem, we're talking about, we realize that there's first of all, Can somebody tell me how many stanzas do we see here? How many stanzas comprise this poem?
9 stanzas.
Thank you. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And yes, 2 lines can make up a stanza. In Elizabethan literature, you hear about couplets, rhyming couplets. Couplets is when you have 2 lines. Rhyming couplets is when you have 2 lines at the end of it, it might rhyme. So you have your 9 stanzas. And when you look at the poem, seems pretty easy to read, right? To a daughter by, and you always pay attention down here. You see the name of the poet. And I want you to pay attention as well. Since we have changed genre, we have also changed the terms that we use to make reference to the poem. So we no longer do we talk about playwright. We're talking about the poet. We're talking about stanza. We're talking about persona, speaker. We're talking about, so we see the changes, right? So we look at the poem and it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. But that would be the surface. And when we look at our figurative device, we realize that the figurative device or figurative devices are the literary techniques the poet uses to convey meaning, images, themes, and overall, that should be one word, overall message. Now, I use the word literary techniques because sometimes you might see figurative devices, you might see literary techniques. They mean the same thing, same thing. And these make reference to, you know, similes, metaphors, personifications, and so on. I'm going to make note of one device. We spoke about contrast when we're talking about drama. And for English and for poetry, contrast means the same. And contrast is basically when you see the difference, right? Symbolism, when something represents something else. What else? Allusion. This is what I wanted to make reference to. Now, you might have known of biblical allusion, making reference to the Bible. But when we talk about allusion, we're talking about making reference. So allusion could be making reference to anything. It could be making reference to World War I. It could be making reference to a story. But when we talk about biblical allusion, we're talking about making reference to the Bible. All right, so let me put a pep in my step. All right, so a couple of tips I want to review with you. And this is a different poem. And you notice the structure is a little different. Always, when you're reading, one of the things or one of the reasons why you are challenged with poetry is how you go about analyzing the poem. Always pay attention to the title of the poem, because the title of the poem often gives you an idea of what the overall poem is about. Once again, you cannot read poetry once. Well, you can if you're like that, but I would advise you that you take the time, read it twice. This is what I love to say to my students. After doing your first reading of the poem, you would have made notes. And remember, it's your exam booklet. You can scribble on it. you would have made note of those meanings that jump out at you. So you might have an idea of what the poem is about, but you want to be very sure. So you can go back in and you can read line by line, stanza by stanza. And remember that each stanza might convey a different part of the overall image of what the poem is saying. So each stanza might contribute a new part of the I don't want to say story, but the overall meaning of the poem, right? Always remember, if there's no punctuation mark at the end of the stanza, continue reading until you see one. One of the main things that might be causing you not to understand what the poem is saying is because you are not reading the poem how it's supposed to be read, right? So for example, I love to call these lines run-on lines because there's no punctuation. So instead of saying, the sea flings itself up on the sand, and then you pause. With abandon, then you pause. Then turns and shimmies out, you pause. Drawing pebbles, it scraps from the land, pause. You have no clue what you're reading because the idea is disjointed based on how you're reading. But if you read it, the sea flings itself up on the sand with abandon, then turns and shimmies out, drawing pebbles, it scrapes or scraps from the land. Notice the difference in how you understand based on how you read the poem. Always find the literal meaning as well as the figurative meaning. Examine for the literary devices, and we're seeing some jumping out at us here. And always review the structure of the poem, meaning the overall layout of the poem, right? Now, if we should look at it this way, let us look at the questions. Can I have a reader for this beautiful poem?
Me.
Go ahead.
An Asian gesture. I thought as I wiped my eyes on the corner of my apron, Penelope did this too. And more than once, you can't keep weaving all day and undoing it all through the night. Your arms get tired and the back of your neck gets tight. And along towards morning, when you think it will never be light, and your husband has been gone, and you don't know where for years, suddenly you would burst into tears. There's simply nothing else to do. As I thought, as I wiped my eyes on the corner of my apron, this is an Asian gesture, authentic, antique, in the very best tradition, classic Greek. Miss, what's that word?
Ulysses?
Ulysses did this too, but only as a gesture.
Sorry, Ulysses, continue. Sorry. I'm sorry, Ulysses. You hear me?
Pardon?
I'm sorry, I was snacking on something. Ulysses.
Ulysses did this too, but only as a gesture which implied to the assembled throng that he was much too moved to speak. He learned it from Penelope, Penelope who really cried.
Thank you very much, my dear. Excellent reading. And I want you to note that what she did was to use the techniques, read where she was supposed to read. She really and truly read in a way that would assist in the overall understanding of the poem. Now, Ulysses was a Roman name, a hero in ancient Greek literature. So he was a hero in ancient Greek literature. All right. Now, in this poem, what would be that ancient gesture? What would be that thing? Notice the name of the poem. Everybody's quiet. All right, so if we look at stanza 1, I thought as I wiped my eyes on the corner of my apron, Penelope did this too. And it goes on. So we see this woman in an apron, and she's there, and she's wiping her eyes, suggesting that she's doing what?
Crying.
Crying. Good. And more than once, you can't keep weaving all day, and I'm doing it all through the night. So she realized, so it makes mention when you talk about weaving, talking about creating something, right? Your arms are tired, and I wish I had a picture of one of those. If you have ever read like the Rapunzel story,
Yeah.
and Rapunzel, yeah, Rapunzel,
Yeah, Rapunzel.
what's his name? The one that weaves gold. Can't remember.
Rumpelstiltskin.
Thank you. Oh my God. Rumpelstiltskin that weaves gold, and you have this big round thing that weaves. And so you have to keep moving, and notice it says line 5, your arms are tired and the back of your neck gets stiff. And along towards morning, when you think it will never be. So here she's working, doing what she needs to get done. Now, just like how the poem was read, now, after you've read the poem and you have an idea of what the poem is about, just like what we're simulating now, you go through line by line, stanza by stanza. Now, because of the interest of time, I want us to pay attention to the question that's here. And the question is based on lines 8 to 9. So 6, 7, 8, 9. So these 2 lines right here. And notice the lines are stated. And as a literature student, you know that there's a slash to show where one line ends and another line begins. So this would be line 8 and this would be line 9. And it would be what effect is created in lines 8 to 9 by these words. And I'm going to give you some time. Suddenly you burst into tears. There is simply nothing else to do. Which Beyonce? Go ahead, my love.
Miss, I say B.
B. All right, so Beyonce. Go ahead, Tiana.
B also.
B. Anybody else want to throw their hat in the ring? One more.
Miss, I say B also.
B also. Thank you. All right, and so you guys are brilliant. Excellent. Good job. So looking at B, they reinforce the idea of helplessness and loss of control. So when you look at the effect, the term effect basically means what idea is conveyed based on how it's used here by these lines. So always, guys, when you see the question, break down the question. Let's just look at this one. In this poem, the reference to Penelope and Ulysses is significant in portraying the central idea because it
Miss, I say B gives context and meaning to a specific gesture.
It gives context and meaning to a specific gesture. Thank you, Shanae. Do anyone else is with Shanae and with B? And when we look at central idea, we're looking at theme. Portraying the
Miss,
central. Sorry, go ahead, love.
Miss, I agree with her.
So you agree it's B, okay? Thank you, Beyonce. Anyone else? Shani?
Pass, miss.
Okay, no problem. And the answer is A. So let us dig a little deeper. In this poem, the reference of Penelope, the problem, not the problem.
Miss,
What did you say, Shanae?
Miss, I just saw the answer because I was about to ask what was the answer.
Oh, okay. All right, so I'm going to explain. So the reference to Penelope and Ulysses is significant. So we said that Ulysses is an ancient Greek god, right? Or no, Greek hero. Let us look at it. And we look at line 11, 12, 13. So it says, all along we see the speaker in crying, is in turmoil. She's crying and she was saying, I'm crying and I'm wiping my eyes, and Penelope did the same. So we know from this that Penelope would have had a similar experience to that of the persona of the poem, right? And then you go down here, so she continues to be distressed and continues to cry in stanza 2. And we go down, and then it says, this is an ancient, yes, Leandra, go ahead.
They're comparing.
Yes. I'm sorry. I get really loud when I'm excited. Yes. So basically, the persona is being compared to, you might not even know who Penelope is, and that's not important, but based on what we're getting, we know that Penelope would have been crying similar to the persona, right? So the use of the word parallel, yeah, you have parallel means two things that are alongside each other, right? So two things that are similar. So the personal anguish of the speaker. So these people are experiencing a similar thing as the speaker. Now I wanted to share this because I wanted you to realize that you have to always, especially with poetry, you have to always ensure that you reinforce your answer. So if you think it's B, you need to go back to the poem and see if what is in the poem actually agrees with the answer that you have selected. Let us look at this one. The title, and this is another type of question that they might ask you about the title, and you might see this for this section again. So the title, An Ancient Gesture, is effective, primarily because it,
D.
Miss, I say D.
D, somebody says D for dog. Anyone else?
Yes. D, miss.
Miss, I agree. D.
Okay, so we agree?
Yes,
Yes, miss.
All right, so drum roll, dum da da da. D, oh my God, you guys are brilliant if you did not know. So it connects the past, but guys, based on the paper, this would have been the last question. But I want you to understand something. Because we reasoned and we went through the questions before, we were able to, and we're sure of the fact that, okay, we went through the questions, we analyzed, we went back to the poem, we were now better able to understand what the poem is saying. And so because of that, we are now better able to answer the next question. So one thing I want you to know that the questions are often linked, so that if you're able to understand and answer one question, then the other questions, you can use that knowledge to help you to answer the other question. Now, this is something I wanted to add. The device most used in the poem is, and remember we talk about those bold letters.
So I would say comparison.
Somebody said comparison. Anyone else?
I agree with comparison.
Comparison. All right. So, and you are correct. This is something that I wanted to share because I wanted to look at free verse. B. Anybody knows what the term free verse means?
The poem doesn't rhyme.
Excellent. The poem doesn't rhyme. So the poem doesn't have a set rhyme scheme, right? And free verse is often associated with the structure of the poem. And oftentimes, we don't necessarily look at free verse in the terms of a figurative device. We often look at it in terms of the poetic structure, the structure of the poem. Now, saying this to say that you have to know your figurative devices, because you might get options that might not necessarily be figurative devices. But saying this to say, you have to look also at the question, because notice the question asks for device. It didn't specify to say whether it's simile, metaphor, figurative, literary. It asks what device. And in this context, we can say device is what technique the writer uses. Not the writer, the poet. What technique is used by the poet in most in this poem. Anybody understands that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. This is another one. Which of the following best tone, best describes? Best describes. Aloof, resentful, semi-formal.
Miss, what is aloof?
Aloof.
Not friendly or forthcoming, cool and
Somebody said
distant.
something, so I have A for one. Anyone else?
Miss, I would say conversational because it's easy to understand.
And when
Miss,
it's
I'm asking what is aloof, Miss.
oh, sorry. Aloof is when you are kind of standoffish. It's when you
Cool and
are
distant.
not approachable.
Oh.
Yeah. Let me give you the proper code. It might be distance, not friendly. That is the meaning of aloof. So I'm getting conversational. Anyone else? And the answer is you are correct. Conversational. And conversational, it's like it's kind of back and forth. It is like you're having, for want of a better word, you're having a conversation. Good job. Any questions? We're good so far? All right, so let's move on. Now, when we talk about section C, we're looking at prose extract. And in looking at prose extract, we are looking at, yes, Beyonce, go ahead.
Miss, what does assonance mean?
Okay, assonance is the repetition of vowel sounds. So whereas you might have alliteration, and the alliteration might be the repetition of the initial consonant sound, assonance is the opposite. So let me see if I can find an easy example for you. So, all right, so an example is clap your hands and stomp your feet. Now, if we're really pronouncing the words, you might be able to hear the repetition of that A in clap your hands and stomp your feet, or it beats as it's sweep. So you have beat, sweep, cleans. So you have the repetition of a particular vowel sound. And the vowel sound is internal. It's within the word. So the word doesn't start with the vowel sound. You hear the sound being repeated within the word. Beyonce, did that answer your question?
Yes, Miss, I understand now.
All right. Hopefully. Okay. Awesome. All right. So looking at characterization, we look at the prose extract. So the prose extract, as you know, it's a passage that is taken from a story, a short story, could be a novel, right? And when we're examining prose extracts, we have to look at characterization. We have to look at the relationship between characters. We have to look at point of view. We have to look at setting. We have to look at imagery. And in looking at plot, conflict, so we know the types of conflict: man versus man versus himself, man versus society, man versus nature. There are other types of conflicts. However, these are the most common ones. We spoke about climax, that point in the story where you're not sure what's going to happen. And you also look at possible themes that are there, right? So you look at these, because when you're looking, you look at these different aspects. Now, saying that to say, I continue. Saying that to say, hold on, there's something. For characterization, I think we spoke about all of them, and we're going to talk about point of view. So we have figurative devices for poetry, we have dramatic techniques for drama, and for the prose section, we have narrative techniques. And once again, narrative techniques are the devices the writer uses to convey his meaning or thematic concerns. Simply put, these devices help to convey whatever theme the writer is trying to present or whatever meaning he's trying to present. Some examples are point of view. So you have first person, you have third person, you have third person omniscient. Now you might see second person in your reading, but for the most part, when it comes to Caribbean literature, in, from my experience, we don't normally go into second person. That is mostly seen in the American classroom. Now, with that said, You can look at symbolism, same thing, symbols, imagery, contrast, foreshadowing. And foreshadowing, you might not see it always, but when there's a hint of something to come. Now, in looking at this, you're looking at an example of a prose extract. And remember, guys, it's 2 prose extract, 1 Caribbean, 1 non-Caribbean. Now, in approaching, so this is another example. In approaching the prose extract, I would suggest you analyze the characters, examine the setting, you look for imagery or the presentation of any images. Look at the devices that are used to create, because normally when you see images or imagery, these are created by devices, and you want to look at these devices because you're not sure if any question might be based on it. It's good to identify if there are any possible conflicts, if it is that there is any possible theme that's presented, because all of this helps you to better understand. Remember, guys, you're always looking for a deeper meaning. So it's not just you reading like a comprehension passage. This is more. You have to read and look for your deeper meaning. Now, we're not going to go into this, the questions like we did before because of the nature of the passage. But what I want us to do is I want us to look at the structure of the question. So just like I said, what image of law, so you notice the use of image or imagery here based on the question. Also, what figurative device, that's another question that is used. And remember, we talked about contrast before. Same thing remains the same. We spoke about imagery, simile. So you look at this. So based on lines 8 to 9, what would be the answer right here, guys?
A.
A, because the use of like suggests that this would be a simile, right? So that's one type of question. What effect does the writer achieve by the repeated reference to Lotus's uniform? So that's another question. So guys, you realize that there's a pattern to certain types of questions. When we talk about effect, what are we talking about? What did we say we're talking about when we talk about effect?
Ideas.
What is conveyed, what idea is conveyed based on the reference to Lotus's uniform? That's basically what the question is asking. Once again, we talk about point of view, right? And this is from the perspective from which the passage or is being told. Now, I want us to talk about D, third person omniscient. Anybody knows what is third person omniscient? Yes, Tiana, go ahead.
Third person omniscient, this is when the narrator or a character in the story itself knows information about all the other characters and not just limited to
right.
Character.
Excellent job. So excellent job, Tiana. So the narrator is all knowing, all seeing. So you get the different sides. Make a note of that, guys. So the narrator knows all, sees all. So you get the different sides of the picture. And third person limited would be the opposite of third person omniscient, which means what?
They wouldn't have enough information.
They only know the information about one character.
Excellent. So the third person limited only knows information about one particular character. You know, it's limited. You don't see everything. Good? And we know first person, you're talking from one person's point of view. Good. So it's good to know that so that when you're asked questions about point of view, a lot of times you don't know how to answer it because it's not that you don't know how to identify the point of view. It's that you might not remember what third person omniscient means or what third person limited is, etc., etc. So it's good. I would suggest you read up on all four of those. Now, which of the following best describes the conflict? Notice another type of question that is here. And once again, here it talks about historical conflict, personal conflict, social conflict, political conflict. There are many types of conflicts, but based on what is presented here in the passage, you will be able to identify. Now, some things I want you to think as we come to an end of this presentation. We're going to wrap up in about 6 minutes. Complete the paper the way that is easiest for you. Meaning that if it means that for you, you start with the prose section and then you move to poetry and then you move to drama, you complete the paper how it's easiest for you. So you can start the paper, any part of the paper. So it doesn't mean that because it's section A, B, and C, you have to do the paper that way. If it is that you find it easier to start with section C, then you go to section A. Just ensure that whatever answers that you're responding to, you share the correct number on your answer sheet, all right? Do not leave any question blank. Unacceptable. No. And with that said, please do not eeny, meeny, miny, moe the paper. C is not the answer for everything. Also, remember to follow the shading instructions. Remember that your response, your answer sheet will be marked by a machine. And so as a result of that, you need to ensure that you buy your correct pencil that is set on your timetable. You need to ensure that you shade correctly and complete so that your responses can be identified. Once again, this is if you're doing it via paper. Use all your skills to analyze the paper. I want you to remember that you know more than you think you know. And so whether you know it, yes or no, you are able to answer the questions on the paper. If you have been doing the work, if you have been following what's going on, you're able, even if you have never seen the poem before, the extract before, you're able to answer it because you would have done the techniques that we spoke about. So remember, it's all about technique. Now, 5. Most questions make reference to the line. So always go and examine these lines. We saw that. So always go back and examine. Each genre has various techniques that you should know and understand. So a lot of the questions that you see are very genre specific. So there are certain types of questions that we looked at that you saw that's specific to drama, specific to poetry, specific to prose, whereas, for example, across the genres, you might see questions that are being asked about contrast, about symbol. Those are things that that might not be genre specific, but you also need to know how to answer. Now, with that said, do we have any final questions?
Yes, Miss.
Yes, go ahead, my dear.
So I wanted to go through some of the things that we went through, like the things that
Hold on.
hold
Hold on. I'm not hearing you clearly. Go ahead.
I wrote down some things that I wanted to research. I'm wondering if you could assess them and maybe give me a few others. So I wrote point of view, tones, mood, narrative techniques, poetic techniques. Could you give me a few others?
When we say poetic would be literary devices.
Okay.
Or figurative devices. Both words mean the same thing.
Okay. Dramatic irony. Thanks for that.
No problem, my dear. That's what we're here for. Is there anything else? I think you would have covered. And what I like is that this lesson will be on Facebook. And so you can go back to Facebook and you can view this lesson. Is there another hand that is up? Is there another hand? And so you can go back and you can make additional notes. So I think it was Tiana that was asking. All right, so I'm curious to find out something. We have 1 minute, but I think we can get this done. I'm curious. One thing I would love, guys, don't leave me hanging here. I would love for you to share one thing. Hi, yes, go ahead. Penrose, go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon again. My name is Deborah Penrose from the Immaculate Conception High School. On behalf of all the students here, I'd like to thank you for taking your time to be here to help us during this pandemic. Thank you for explaining different dramatic and literary techniques, and I'm sure that we all learned something today. At the end of this lesson, I'm happy to say that I understand the different dramatic techniques, such as dramatic significance, more clearly, and I understand how important it is to read through all options, revisit the passages, and use context clues for guidance. I really appreciate it, and I do hope that you enjoy the rest of your day, and may God continue to bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Penrose. I feel truly blessed by what you have just said. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else?
Miss, could you please send a link in the WhatsApp group of the previous past papers?
All right, the issue that we're having, guys, is that for paper 1, English B, this is our 3rd year doing multiple choice, and so we don't have a lot of past papers. Another thing is that because paper 1 is considered a very sacred paper by CSEC, as teachers, our hands are kind of tied. So the paper 1 books that you would have purchased, that's very helpful in terms of getting it done. Any other resources that your teachers might have, they will send. And of course, for those of us who are back in the classroom, I know that you would be doing practice exercises based on paper 1. But Shanae, I will send whatever I have in the group. Anyone else? Final comment?
Miss, aren't you at school?
I will speak to you, Shanae. I will send me a WhatsApp message. All right. So my final thoughts. William Ward said, recipe for success: study while others are sleeping, work while others are loafing, prepare while others are playing, and dream while others are wishing. Now, I'm not saying, I don't want you to think that this is going to be impossible for you to pass, because you guys are brilliant. But I also want you to listen to what Dr. Spock said. Trust yourself. You know more than you think. Put in the work, like what Mr. Ward recommended. And then while you have prepared, because preparation is very important, when you go into that room, trust that everything that you would have prepared for, you have the capability to complete this exam. I have faith that you guys in Region 6, and I know this is Region 6, and I know we have students from other regions here, but I know you guys will do well. And as I come to the end, I want to wish you guys all the best. I really want to take the opportunity to say to you guys that let me bring up my because I want to take the opportunity to really and truly say to you guys that thank you for having me, Mr. Brown. And thank you guys for taking the time to be here. The resource will be posted. Additional information can be had at CSEC English Made Easy. And have a good rest of the day. Mr. Brown, do you have anything you would like to say?
This is not Mr. Brown. This is Chambers Henry.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Hi, Mrs. Chambers Henry.
Yes, indeed. I just need to say I will be publishing a poll at this time, and I would like all the attendees to participate. Over to you now, Miss Henry.
Yes, I was saying good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, students. This is Leonie Chambers Henry, a teacher of language and literature, and I must say that this has been the most, or one of the most informative literature classes that I've ever been. I've learned so much, and I'm sure that you have learned so much. So at this time, let me add my vote of thanks to Mr. Brown for coming up with the idea of hosting such a seminar at this most appropriate time. I must also say thanks to Ms. Blair for kindly consenting to do this particular session for us. And we really hope, one of the things that I know is that we are brilliant students, and I'm sure that we will pass the exam once we put our minds to it. Yes, the time is tough. Yes, it is rough. Yes, we are scared. Yes, it is hard. But whatever the situation is, do not allow it to cripple you into inaction. What do I mean by inaction? Inaction is not turning up for the exam. Inaction is thinking you can't pass because you have been equipped with the skills to pass the exams. And when we speak of inaction, we're also speaking about allowing whatever it is that is happening around you to detract you from achieving your goals. So if it is that we believe that this is something that we can do irrespective of what is happening, let us push through, because in pushing through, we will gain the success that we so desire. Thank you again. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Mr. Brown?
Thank you very much, Mrs. Leonie Chambers. Well said. And our presenter, you did an extraordinary job. Thank you, viewers, and see you next year, hopefully, same place. However, it will be at a different time. God bless you.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye. Thank you again.
Bye-bye.